What's up, guys? My name's Chris. This is my introduction to my YouTube channel, S2k Speed 3 Money Pit. So with this channel, what you can expect to see here will be me attempting to share my knowledge about my two latest financial mistakes, which would be my 2010 Mazda Speed 3 and my 2004 Honda S2000. Trying to share what knowledge I have on the two platforms, also mixed within hopefully taking in some knowledge from the community on those two platforms of stuff I don't understand or can't figure out on my own. So you'll see me working on the cars here, trying to fix the cars. I would say I've built these two cars to do fun backroads driving. I do daily drive the Mazda Speed 3, so that fun backroads driving is going to mean that I'm trying to balance horsepower and handling ability. So they're not a all-out horsepower machine, and I'm not building either car to do drag racing. So I'm just a regular guy working in this garage on the ground, no lifts. I do have an engine crane, engine stand, parts washer, air compressor, welder. Basic stuff that anybody can get a hold of and do in their garage. No professional shop level stuff. Most of my tools are fairly cheap, Harbor Freight, maybe a little better quality in some circumstances. So that's it. So let's get into it. So why an S2000, right? Of all the cars you could pick to build, to work on. I guess the number one and most simplest answer would be Honda reliability. I knew when I got this car that it was extremely capable already. You could pretty much just swap the tires out if you wanted to, and on stock power you could go to SCCA events, track events, or do what I like to do, which is back roads, mountain driving, twisty roads. It handles incredibly well. It's kind of the definition of slow car fast. You're not going to win the drag race in this car stock. In fact, you're probably going to get beat by like a minivan at a stoplight with decent power. Where I live in Central Ohio kind of inspired me to try to upgrade the power a little bit, because long straight roads in the middle of cornfields like I'm experiencing right this minute. So the other thing too is I knew that this car could handle a lot of modification without having to build the engine or having to build the transmission or rear end. This car comes with quote crank 240 horsepower, which in reality is like 200 wheel horsepower and maybe 160 foot-pounds of torque. It's not a lot, and you can easily build this car to be in the neighborhood of 400 horsepower, which is about where this car is for me right now, where mine is, and 250 torque or so, and not have to upgrade any of those things I mentioned, really. You don't have to build a motor for that. You don't have to build a transmission or change the rear end. Of course, you're going to need a better clutch, which this car has, and a few other supporting things, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But overall, it's a great platform to start off of. So, and for me, this is sort of in a long line of small, nimble cars that are really good at handling that I've had. I've had a number of hot hatchbacks, and I've also had a Miata at one point that was a lot of fun to drive. So yeah, that's why an S2000 instead of a lot of other cars I could have picked. All right, so here's a closer look at my S2000. As I mentioned when I was driving, power numbers on this car are probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 horsepower, maybe around 250, 260 torque. I say somewhere in the neighborhood because I've never really had a dyno. Only thing I've ever done is V-dyno off of the data that comes off the Infinity. This car's tuned on. This car was tuned by Jeff Evans, actually. He's in Pennsylvania. He does a great job of tuning, and I definitely appreciate the job he did. So let's get started with looking at the engine. This is running a Science of Speed supercharger kit. This is the head here, Paxton Novi 1200. The 1200 is the bigger unit that's available for the two kits that Science of Speed sells. They call it Stage 1 and Stage 2, but really I sort of just did my own DIY kit because I didn't want some of the parts they wanted, or they supply with it. But it does use a water-to-air intercooler, and that's what this is. I don't know if you can see my laser pointer on camera or not, but and then I've wired in an extra IAT sensor on that as well. So the fuel system it requires to run, as I just have the AEM fuel rail, or the AEM pressure regulator, and then those are ID 1050X injectors. So nothing extraordinary there. But there's also a Walbro 450 in the tank, actually, along with a like sort of a tank slosh protector plate thing that's beneficial for not starving for fuel when you're driving on like incline conditions and a lot of back and forth. So the exhaust on this car is a Skunk 2 header, Skunk 2 test pipe, and then it has the Tanabe medallion exhaust. They stopped making that under Tanabe medallion. I think now it's called the Revel or something like that. But you can still get the exhaust, and in my opinion, for the money, it has the best sound. It's loud when you get on at full throttle, and it's not crazy drony when you're just driving on the interstate. So those are some drilled out holes for PCV flow, for better PCV flow up here. Dash 10 lines coming down to this schmuck built oil catch can / radiator overflow setup. I've kind of smashed that filter at some point there. I need to replace that eventually. But besides that, I've got a little bit of cooling upgrade too. I guess you could call it an upgrade. The shroud is debatable at this point, but I've got the Mishimoto radiator, and then the Mishimoto fan shroud, and the fans that come with it. And at some point, I did actually buy some really nice Sparco fans, and I may wire those in to get a little better cooling. But I'm also running the Spoon thermostat, and then that's a Jay's Racing cap on top there. And I had to buy that because the cap that comes with this radiator fails a lot, and mine failed on a trip to the Dragon one time. So at first I went and got one from Advance, and then I replaced it with that Jay's Racing one after the fact. So it holds just fine. So the drivetrain is a stock transmission, stock rear end. I've pretty much got all upgraded mounts, and most of them are hard race. The engine mounts, and then the rear end, and then the transmission itself, I think, is just stock mounts, but I replaced them at some point when I did the fluids. The clutch kit and flywheel is ACT. It's the ACT light flywheel. I originally started with the Clutchmasters FX300 that is highly recommended by LHT, but I did not like that clutch at all. It made a lot of rattling sounds, buzzing sounds. Here, I'll cut to a video of that real quick of my thoughts on that. This is a Clutchmasters FX300, 40,000 miles. Boosted application, Science of Speed supercharger, running low boost, only about 7 psi, making about 370, 380 horsepower. This clutch is trash. It is a piece of junk. It's made buzzy sounds from day one. And you can see right here, that's a big part of why it makes so much noise. If you have an S2000, don't buy this. It's garbage. This is the replacement ACT I'm going with. I know that everyone likes the stock disc with this pressure plate right here, but I'm planning on being quite a bit over 400 horsepower at some point, so I don't want the same thing to happen. I have to do this job again. Back to the S. I've got the suspension on this car. Nothing major aftermarket. There's just some Tane coil springs on stock shock absorbers. I may switch to the Bilstein shock absorbers at some point, but I don't want coilovers because, in my opinion, they're more trouble than they're worth. Right now, it's sitting on the stocks with some cheap all-season tires. But during the winter, I do run, during the summer, I do run RPF 1s. And I've got a Falcon RT660 on there right now. This will probably be my last year running a 200 tread wear tire, just because I don't like how you can't, the lack of flexibility when it starts to get cold out. So there's some centric rotors on there, stop tech pads. I don't track, so I probably won't ever need more than that. For the exterior, the body on this car is not perfect. There is definitely a scratch here or there, like there, and probably a couple of spots down in the front, down there. But as far as like aero, it's got the JDP full kit on there. There is the front lip, the side skirts, and then the rear diffuser, and then the spoiler. So, and then you can see kind of down there the Tanabe medallion exhaust tips I was talking about a few minutes ago. So that's a pretty good look at my S. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. The interior is not really anything major changed in there. There's an NRG hub, a Renown steering wheel, detachable, and I've got my gauge pod, and then I've got one of those power acoustic CarPlay radios in there as well. So besides that, all stock. Well, I do have the backyard, I think it's backyard special or something like that's what it's called. That's the lower bottom of the seat. I'm not a super tall guy, but I'm about 6 foot tall, and so yeah, it's definitely a challenge for me to get in there. So that's it for the S. All right, so that's a rundown of my S2000. You know, I primarily get this car out, you know, when it's warm. It does sit in the garage a lot during the winter months. You know, I don't take a lot out on the boring Central Ohio roads. I like to get into North Carolina, West Virginia, any place I can get where there's twisty mountain roads to have fun on. Really boring to drive, you know, in this area where I live at. So I usually wind up going to 2 or 3 driving sessions a year with friends to places like Tail of the Dragon and various events down there. I know the big Honda meet coming up down there in October this year is going on. Honda's on the Dragon, and I think the sponsor car this year is the S2000, so I'm definitely going to try to be there for that. So some upcoming projects on this car that you'll see on this channel that I'm going to be doing here soon is I'll be relocating the ABS module from where it is now, which essentially looks like a rat's nest, over into the fender well. I'll be switching out my brake lines to some braided lines, probably painting the calipers and cleaning them up in the process. I'm going to be relocating my battery down into the front bumper basically, and doing some remote terminals. Also moving the fuse panel in the process of doing that. I don't really have any plans right now for more horsepower. This car, you know, like I said, it probably makes in the neighborhood of 400 horsepower, and that's plenty. I'd love to find a way to put AEM Infinity data up on a CarPlay display, like for what I've got on this radio, if possible. For a long time, I wanted to put a big, 7-inch tablet in here with my data on it, but it just winds up looking stupid. So decided not to do that. If anybody knows a good way to, like a CarPlay app to display AEM Infinity data, like please shoot me a comment. I do just want to mention, like, there are so many great YouTube channels and resources for this car, and I've used them all along the way to build this car, to do what I've done so far. LHT is a great resource, even though, I had some negative things to say about their recommendations on clutches. They're still an amazing resource for this car. DIY Guys is a great YouTube channel. Engineering Explained is another great YouTube channel. Turbo S2k, so of course S2KI, the forum, and of course Science of Speed is an amazing resource for this car. Science of Speed is where my supercharger kit came from, and they talked me through a lot of what I had to do when I initially installed the kit and got everything to work. So, but yeah, that's about it for my S2000. S2k for reliability, this car would pretty much be the complete opposite. Let's just say it was cheap. I didn't pay a lot of money for this car originally, but honestly, I don't even know how it wasn't a salvage title to start with. I mean, the rust on the jack points on this car and a lot of the subframe in the back is pretty ridiculous. I'm kind of always debating whether or not I may try at some point to cut those places and weld in panels to fix it, or I may just take the engine and suspension out of this car at some point and put it into another one. But overall, you know, this car is my second Speed 3 in life. I had a Gen 1 Speed 3 back in 2008. It was blue. I really enjoyed that car, and it was a lot of fun. So was that community at the time. A lot of fun people in that community. But yeah, I mean, it's in addition to having a lot of rust, the engine was bad when I got this car, which a lot of Speed 3s are. If you buy a Speed 3 in 2024, 2025, you should probably reasonably expect to have to rebuild the engine, unless you're buying some unicorn that someone put in a garage since 2010 or 2012 or something. So, I mean, just comparing it to my S2000, it's just not as well engineered in a lot of ways. You know, the design of the valve train, the way that, you know, the core support is structured, the metals used, like everything from top to bottom. There's so many things that are, you know, just better on my S2000, more reliable, stronger. You know, the block itself, the design of it, the girdle, the bottom of it, the FR liner and the cylinders on the S2000 are amazing compared to this. This is definitely cost-effective engineering, and it's really just Ford at its core. Like a lot of people will tell you, this is sort of you had the Gen 1 car, the Gen 2 car, and then after this you had the Focus ST, and the Focus ST is really like a Gen 3 Mazda Speed 3. So at least the world Focus ST car, not the ones before it that they only got in Europe. Those are different cars. So as a car though, as tearing a car down from top to bottom, I definitely know the most about this car. I've had it apart from top to bottom, the inside, the outside, the engine, most of the suspension, subframe, everything, all apart at some point. So, although, you know, it breaks a lot, and I spend a lot of my time just trying to maintain it as my daily driver. Little issues with it here and there. Always looking at a check engine light. Something's always going on. When it works, it is a fun car to drive. I really love the exhaust note on this car. You know, I mentioned the Focus ST. Those cars have what people commonly refer to as the head-a-fold, which is just like an integrated exhaust manifold, where this car still has a separate exhaust manifold. Also, the turbo that comes on this stock is just bigger, and so your options are a lot easier to deal with as far as turbo upgrades. But yeah, I mean, the sound on this car is almost, it's unequal length header, you know, the manifold. It's almost like Subaru, but not quite. It's a unique sound. Mixed with the turbo sounds in this car, it's a lot of fun. It can be fun to drive. Amazing mid-range torque, you know, so that's what makes it a great daily driver. So it definitely has its limits. You know, this car, you know, if you're out to have a hot hatch and you want to make 500 horsepower, the amount of work you would have to do to this is pretty ridiculous. And in my opinion, it's not worth it. So if you want 500 horsepower hot hatch, buy a Civic Type R. You'll have it much faster and easier. This car for me is more about, it was cheap initially. I did spend quite a bit of money into fixing all of its problems and making it work. But it, you know, the rawness of it, the lack of electronic controls is what like makes this car fun for me. So, all right, so let's have a closer look at this rust bucket of mine, Mazda Speed 3. So power numbers on this thing are going to be about probably around 330, 340 horsepower, maybe 360 torque. Again, that's around, because the only thing I've used is V-dyno with this thing, just like my S2000. This car was tuned by Farhan, who works with Matt at Damon Motorsports. So they did a great job, extremely supportive. Really appreciate the work he did with that. May go back to them if I have my front mount intercooler still. This car has what you could consider a built motor. The rods, the pistons, headwork. There's no balance shaft. The JBR baffle plate. So the rods and pistons are Manly for both of those. The headwork was done by a local machine shop that unfortunately closed down after I had to do the work. Of course, they cleaned up the head for me and did all the stem seals and everything else before I put it back together. They did the boring, the honing. They did the polish crank and checking crank tolerances. This also has king bearings. I could probably talk about the motor build all day long for this car because it was a lot of work and it consumed about, I don't know, probably about close to a year of my life actually of getting a salvage motor, tearing it down, taking it to the machine shop, rebuilding that motor, and then actually swapping it into this car. The old block is actually still sitting right over there that was in this car originally. So, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of pics. If anybody's interested, hit me up in the comments. I'll make it a video if anybody wants to know if has any questions about my motor rebuild on this. I'll say some of the hardest parts would be getting your tappet buckets right, getting your timing set, getting your crank bolt properly torqued down. Some of the other hardest things for me, I installed my rear main sealing correctly first, and that's a big problem. When it leaks when you're all done, you have to tear it all back apart to get back to it again. I've actually had to buy a special tool, which is this guy right here, in order to properly install that thing. It's the same process as the Focus ST. Also, when I was building the motor, I actually chipped one of my pistons. Tried to smooth it over, and I looked at it and said, "Yeah, that's not good enough. I'm gonna have to go and get another one." So Matt and Danny actually got me another one after that. After I did that. So, but yeah, this car is running a B&R S3 V1. I sent that off to Brian at B&R Motorsports, and he took it apart, checked all the seals on it for me. It is a stock turbo supply line for the oil with a restrictor banjo and an upgraded drain line. It's the upgraded drain that Graveyard Motorsports sells. The combination of those two things fixed all my smoke problems. So if you have any smoke problems, I'd highly recommend getting that drain first. It does have the Cork Sport upgraded internal fuel pump internals. The overspeed injector seals. The injectors were checked by Speed Performance. I may wind up pulling it back out and changing again to the Cork Sport seals or something else if I keep having the misfire problem. It does run a CPE catted downpipe, which you may be able to see down in there. You're not be able to see the turbo. Turbo's on the back of the engine of this car. So it runs the Cork Sport catback exhaust. This is probably one of the oldest CPE Gen 1 top mount intercoolers. And that is the Damon 3-point electronic boost controller up there as well. As you can see, I got my ECU kind of just stuffed off to the right. That is the JBR 3-inch intake there too. And I actually did already order the Core Sport battery box to relocate your ECU, so I'll be installing that soon too. So, this turbo is capable of doing 30 pounds of boost at 4,000 RPM. I have lots of crazy logs showing that. It's really good at mid-range power. So, for the drivetrain on this car is the Luck clutch kit, which is basically just a stock clutch. I did take a stab at resurfacing the flywheel myself. Stock transmission. Replaced one of the axles when I rebuilt it. For the brakes and suspension, nothing too crazy going on there. It is the Koni STRT kit. You can see it's the orange Koni shock absorbers up under there. I've also got the Core Sport camber adjustment plates on the top and the front. In the back, I've got the SPC rear camber adjustable arms in the back. I definitely like anybody's recommendation on degrees of camber, because if you look right now, I've probably got too much negative camber in the rear of this car, to say the least. If you take a look at the way it is right now. I will probably just do the stock specs for alignment on this car, but I'd like to run a little extra negative camber in the rear. So I've got the Cork Sport big brake kit that works with the stock rotors in the front. Braided lines. That's an Inky T6S 18 by 8.5 plus 35 wheel, sitting on a Continental DWS 06 Plus tire. So For the exterior of this car, nothing amazing. I did paint the hood scoop at some point. That is the Basin R grill insert. And then down inside there, I do actually have an aftermarket crash bar already set up on there, so I can switch to the different intercooler at some point. For the interior, nothing fancy going on there. I've got the CarPlay radio. It's just an Alpine stereo. I've also got a oil pressure in my vent pod right here. And then, besides that, I've just done numerous repairs. I replaced the dash at some point. I replaced the blend actuator, one of my speakers, headrest, some of the carpet, door actuator over here so the alarm doesn't go off. Like I said, stuff breaks on this car. Because as I mentioned before, it breaks a lot. And like I mentioned before, I do spend probably more time fixing this car, maintaining it, than I do modding it. So it does make good sounds, and it is decently comfortable for modern standards. I have CarPlay radio in here, and and the seats are pretty good. It's a push button start. It's keyless entry. Those little things like that. It's got dual climate control. These are features that are archaic at this point, but it's decent to have for a daily driver. So, some upcoming projects on this car. Right now, I've got a PO3303 misfire code, and I've also got like a UO300 body control module code going on. I've already taken some steps to sort of diagnose the misfire code. I've changed the plugs. I've moved some coils around. I've been cleaning some of the connectors on the wiring, and I may start messing with the fuel injectors soon. So I may record some of that and post up. But probably before that, the other code that I have, the UO300 code, is a body control module communication code. And I suspect that might have something to do with back when I took the dash apart and replaced the dash in this car. And maybe I jiggled some wires, or I left something unplugged or something else. So I'm going to take it apart to take a look at that. And I actually already bought another body control module off of eBay. And so if I can't find anything loose or not well grounded or something, then I'll probably just go ahead and swap the module and see what happens. Not a lot of good information on that, so maybe I'll be able to help somebody out if they also have a body control module. I'll also probably be replacing the toe bolts soon. The toe bolts are very rusted. They need replaced. This car needs an alignment after that. The AC compressor has never been properly fully mounted onto the block on this car, because when I rebuilt the engine that I had snapped off bolts inside the block, and I'm probably going to wind up blobbing a little bit of MIG weld onto the block, and then trying to drill out and re-tap another hole to make that work. So I'll probably put an FMIC or front mount intercooler on this car at some point instead of the top mount. It is a better solution for cooling for turbo. It's just money right now. I'm just looking for like a used piping kit for a good price off of somebody. I already have a core and I already have the crash bar. Maybe at some point I'll buy some aftermarket headlights, but most of them are not as nice as the tech package stock ones. So I definitely want to say thanks for this car, to like a lot of the community and the people who support stuff with this car. That YouTube channel, Wannabe Tuners, I probably watched that engine build video on that channel 30 times. Cameron Alpha's got a lot of great videos. Graveyard Motorsports out in Utah, and of course, Matt, Damon Motorsports, Matt Davey. He started that place. I met Matt back when I had my first Gen 1 Speed 3, and they're an amazing resource for Mazda community. I kind of like to know, are there other people out there that have these two cars? I think in all the forums and groups and stuff that I belong to and I've looked through, I think maybe only ever saw one person besides myself that has a Mazda Speed 3 and an S2000. So they're definitely two different planets when it comes to build quality and reliability. But yeah, I'm just curious if you do, let me know. They have vastly different communities too of people who enjoy those cars as well. So that's about it for my first video. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.